If a nuclear attack happens, how far do we need to be to survive the explosion? Why is a nuclear explosion so devastating? And what should we actually do to save our lives during a nuclear attack? I'll answer the major medical questions that come up about nuclear weapons and their deadly radiation. The first question: what exactly is a nuclear weapon? The main idea behind a nuclear weapon is that the explosion happens because of the energy stored in the nucleus of atoms. Every atom has a nucleus at its center, with electrons moving around it, but the main part is the nucleus itself. When the nucleus splits, which is called fission, or when two nuclei fuse together, which is called fusion, they release an incredible amount of energy. That's the basic principle behind a nuclear weapon. It uses the energy released from changes in the atomic nucleus. Nuclear weapons cause much more damage than conventional missiles. Modern nuclear bombs are even much stronger than those used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. Currently, 9 countries have nuclear weapons: the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, China, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea. There are 2 main types of nuclear weapons. The first, and more modern, is the thermonuclear bomb, also called the hydrogen bomb. The second type is the atomic bomb, which is the older version and was used in Japan during World War II. The atomic bomb works by splitting the nucleus of a radioactive atom, such as uranium or plutonium. When a neutron strikes these atoms, the nucleus becomes very unstable and splits apart. This is called fission. This process releases a huge amount of energy and also produces more neutrons, which go on to split more nuclei, creating a chain reaction. All of this happens in a fraction of a second, resulting in a nuclear explosion. The hydrogen bomb, or thermonuclear bomb, works differently. Instead of splitting, it fuses atomic nuclei together, specifically, hydrogen nuclei fuse to form helium. This process is called fusion and releases even more energy than fission. Alongside this devastating energy, another huge problem is radiation. When atomic splitting occurs, the process creates other radioactive elements like iodine, cesium, barium, and krypton. After a nuclear explosion, these elements are released as radioactive fallout, which can remain dangerous for many years. This long-lasting radiation is one of the biggest problems after a nuclear detonation. Now, you might think that only atomic bombs cause long-term radiation problems, but not thermonuclear bombs. However, both types are dangerous. Even thermonuclear weapons have shells made with radioactive uranium. These shells not only enhance the explosion, but also cause massive radiation. That's why, no matter what type of nuclear weapon is used, the radiation threat always exists. When it comes to strengths of nuclear weapons, there are mainly 2 categories. First, there are strategic nuclear bombs. These are extremely powerful, able to destroy entire cities or even countries. They are usually delivered by intercontinental missiles, submarines, or long-range bombers. The second type is tactical nuclear weapons. These are designed for use on the battlefield, are much smaller, and usually range from 0.1 to 50 kilotons. But even a so-called tactical nuclear weapon, which is considered weaker, is still much more powerful than the bombs used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which were just 15 and 21 kilotons. There are other types as well. Neutron bombs are designed to maximize deaths and radiation but keep buildings mostly intact. Dirty bombs are not true nuclear weapons. They are regular explosives that spread radioactive material, mainly to create contamination and panic. Dirty bombs are rare, mostly a terrorist threat, and neutron bombs have never been used by any country. If we ask which type of nuclear attack is considered most realistic in the near future, about 80% of experts believe it would be a tactical nuclear weapon, often with a strength of around 50 kilotons, which is now quite common. Now, let's discuss what would actually happen if any country used this type of tactical nuclear weapon. When a nuclear explosion happens, 4 major types of energy are released. First is thermal radiation. This is just extreme heat. Second is the blast wave, also called the shock wave. It's made of compressed and superheated air that rushes outward at supersonic speed. This wave destroys almost everything in its path. You can see it as a physical force, a combination of air pressure and wind. Third is the initial radiation, mainly gamma rays and neutrons. Gamma rays are extremely high-energy electromagnetic waves. They travel at the speed of light and can penetrate deep into the body. Fourth is the electromagnetic pulse. This doesn't harm people directly but can knock out communications, power grids, and vehicles over a large area. Now, let's talk about what happens after the explosion. Within 2 kilometers of ground zero, no one survives. The thermal radiation burns bodies instantly. The heat at this distance can reach several thousand degrees Celsius, almost like the surface of the sun. From 2 to 4 kilometers radius, most buildings are destroyed, walls collapse, and people suffer severe burns, most often third-degree burns. This means even muscles and skin are burned down to the bone. Up to 8 kilometers away, people can still get second or third-degree burns, especially if they are outdoors and exposed to the blast. People inside strong buildings are much safer. Beyond 8 to 10 kilometers, most people will survive, especially if they are inside sturdy structures. Now, let's talk about radiation. After a nuclear explosion, the first wave is initial radiation, mainly gamma rays and neutrons. This is deadly, but its effect is limited to a small radius, usually within the first 2 kilometers from the blast. Gamma radiation is strongest in the first minute and can destroy cells and DNA, causing immediate death if exposure is high enough. However, gamma rays travel in straight lines and quickly lose strength as they spread out, so their instant lethal range is very limited. Beyond those first few kilometers, gamma rays are no longer strong enough to kill instantly, but they still cause radiation damage. They make everything in the area radioactive: buildings, air, soil, and even people. Another major threat is fallout. This is radioactive dust and particles created by the explosion that rain down after the blast. Fallout contains radioactive isotopes like iodine, cesium, plutonium, barium, and krypton. These particles can spread for many kilometers, sometimes hundreds of kilometers depending on the wind. They stay in the air and contaminate the soil for a long time. For example, radioactive iodine is most dangerous in the first few weeks after the explosion, especially for children. It dramatically increases the risk of thyroid cancer. The risk can rise by 10 to 50 times, or 1,000 to 5,000% higher than unexposed people. Cesium and strontium are also long-term dangers because their half-life is about 30 years. They keep contaminated areas dangerous for decades and raise the risk of various cancers. Radiation sickness from initial exposure can cause symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, skin burns, hair loss, bone marrow failure, infections, and bleeding. If the exposure is high, death can occur quickly. Radiation doesn't only affect people immediately, it can cause chronic illnesses and birth defects in children born years later. Chronic risks include anemia, immune system weakness, cataracts, and premature aging. Leukemia risk increases fourfold, that's a 400% increase, and usually appears within the first 10 years after exposure. Other cancers, such as breast and lung cancer, have a higher risk that can show up 20 to 30 years later. Now, let's talk about what you should do if you are at risk of a nuclear explosion. If you want to survive a nuclear attack, the first and most important thing is to get inside immediately, as soon as you see a flash, fireball, or hear a blast, or even before if you're warned in advance. Drop to the ground right away to protect yourself from the shockwave and flying debris. Get inside the nearest building as fast as possible. Concrete or brick buildings are best. Basements or underground shelters offer the best protection. Never stay in your car or outdoors. Cars do not protect you from the blast or radiation. Stay away from windows. The blast wave can shatter glass and cause serious injuries. Go as deep as you can. The best protection is distance and thickness. Put as many walls, floors, or layers of earth between you and the outside as possible. The basement is best. If you can't get underground, go to the middle of the building, away from outer walls and the roof. Don't leave your shelter. Radiation is most deadly within the first few hours after the blast. Stay inside for at least 24 hours, unless authorities say it's safe to leave. The first hour is the most dangerous. After 1 hour, radiation drops to 10% of its original level. After 24 hours, it drops to about 1%. Seal your shelter. Close all doors and windows. Turn off fans, air conditioners, and heaters that bring air from outside. Block cracks with wet towels or duct tape if you have it. Remove contaminated clothing if you think you've been exposed to fallout dust. Take off your outer clothing immediately. This can remove up to 90% of radioactive particles. Put contaminated clothes in a plastic bag and keep it away from people and pets. Wash off fallout. Shower with soap and water as soon as possible. Don't scrub harshly or use conditioner. It can bind radioactive dust to your hair. If no shower is available, use wet wipes or a damp cloth to clean your skin and hair, especially hands, face, and exposed areas. Stay informed. Use a battery-powered or hand-crank radio, or check your phone if the network works, to listen for emergency broadcasts. Authorities will tell you when it's safe to leave the shelter. If you're at risk of radioactive iodine exposure, authorities may tell you to take potassium iodide. Stay hydrated and only eat and drink food and water that has not been exposed to fallout dust or left outside. Now, about nuclear winter. This is when so much smoke and dust from burning cities and forests rise into the upper atmosphere that sunlight is blocked worldwide. Global temperature drops sharply, and famine risk rises for months to years. Is nuclear winter realistic? In the case of a major nuclear war with many bombs, the risk is real. Studies show even a limited nuclear war could cause global climate effects and serious food shortages. For a single bomb or a small regional attack, nuclear winter is much less likely, but local food and water supplies can still be contaminated for months. In the end, knowledge is power. It's not fair, but these facts can save your life. The greatest weapon we have against the unthinkable is to be prepared.